What if God designed our seasons of loneliness to draw us closer to Him and deepen our connections with others? Well, Becky Harlan joins me today, and she's going to share powerful insights on finding God in loneliness, which there's a lot of that going on out in the world, and building real connections. Becky, welcome to the call.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you. So Becky, you say in your book, Cultivating Deeper Connections, that loneliness is not the absence of people, it's feeling disconnected from people. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, there was a season in my husband and my life where we were traveling nonstop. I think between 2016 and 2020, we did 65 different countries. We were teaching all over the world, coming back, unpacking, visiting all our grandkids, getting back packed, and heading back on a plane. And, I remember coming home from one trip saying to my husband, I feel lonely. And he looked at me like, what's wrong with you? We've been with thousands of people. But, again, loneliness is not the absence of people. I had been around a lot of people, but I wasn't with the people that I'm most deeply connected with other than my husband. And we really hadn't had us time. We had been so focused on everybody else. And
Mhm.
so loneliness rises up in our souls when we feel disconnected from the people that we are the closest to, and
Mm.
or we feel disconnected from everybody and we don't have close people around us. And
Mhm.
God designed us for connection. And so
Mhm.
loneliness really is a signal that we need to reconnect.
Mhm. Well, you share about feeling lonely even in a crowd, and you were talking about that a little bit. So hearing about an epidemic of loneliness. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was really interesting because in 2023, the Surgeon General came out with a report, and he has said we are now in an epidemic of loneliness. And that, as here in the United States, especially, we need to get back to community and connection because we
Hmm.
have so many people feeling isolated. And the interesting thing about loneliness is not only does it impact our emotional health, which clearly it does, it impacts our physical health. They say that feeling lonely now is equivalent to smoking 15 packs of cigarettes a day.
Mm.
It's impactful and detrimental to our spiritual health because we were designed to connect with God. So when we
Mm.
feel lonely and we feel disconnected from God and others, it increases our feelings of depression and anxiety. It shortens our lifespan. So we've got to really get a handle on it.
Well, you also say you should let go of a critical spirit. Now, this is interesting because I have that inside of me myself, and that the more you criticize others, which I have to kind of filter my mouth, the lonelier you're going to feel. And what's the cure for that?
Yeah, so that's exactly right because people don't want to be around somebody who's critical and negative all the time. And so part of the cure for that really is adopting an attitude of gratitude where you are thankful for everything. Another thing is we have to switch our thinking. We particularly those of us who follow Jesus, we tend to think of ourselves as us who follow Jesus and them who don't. What
Mm.
if Jesus wants us to switch our thinking and see every human being as somebody that is created in the image of a glorious God who deserves to be loved and who holds dignity because they're created in the image of God? And when we begin to switch our thinking like that, we become curious about other people and we're less likely to be critical of them.
Hmm. Criticism is such a big thing, especially, even if you're not feeling very good about yourself, you may criticize it. So criticize it, take the onus off you in a sense, right? Wouldn't that happen? And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, there's just, I really believe that COVID had a lot to do with this engaging with being alone and loneliness because we all were so cut off almost for a whole year, and people just gradually started getting out. Don't you think that?
Yeah, I think we were on a path towards loneliness for a long time before COVID. But when
Mhm.
COVID hit, it upped it. And it also revealed how desperate we are for other human beings. And so
Hmm.
isolation is never good.
Hmm.
And yet we many people felt isolated during COVID. But
Hmm.
I really think the problem began before then. You know, in
Hmm.
fact, it's really interesting if you do some studies on the correlation between technology and loneliness, right? So
Hmm.
technology is wonderful. It helps us connect. Like you and I right now, we can see each other, we can connect through Zoom, and it's
Hmm.
wonderful. However, what's happened in the last 10, 15 years is that technology has taken over our lives. And, you know, we are so dependent on our cell phones. We get our emails, we get social media through there, but that's not really helping us with the face to face connections that we truly
Yes.
need.
Yes, yes, because even when we were doing like, because everybody, my audience knows that I'm a Bible study fellowship leader, and we were doing it on Zoom, and we gradually started to go back, but you could see the difference between connecting through Zoom and in your Bible studies and being in person. There's nothing like it because people
Right,
just they'll just cut themselves off like. Like there's a lot of them now that just prefer to get up in the morning, be in their bathrobe, and get on Zoom and learn instead of
right.
connecting. And so I can see what you're talking about when you say it's even before then, because the connecting in the media through media, social media has been like the thing that people are doing now.
Yeah. And another thing that has really impacted and led to this epidemic of loneliness, I believe, is our constant propensity towards hurry and rushing. You know, we're so busy. We have one appointment after another, and we tend to be in a hurry. And when you're in a hurry, you don't take time to stop and be with people, and to really
Mhm,
form deep connections
mhm,
takes time. And so we
mhm,
have to slow down and begin to just honor people. You know, one
mhm,
of the stories that I love to tell is of my grandmother. My grandmother lived in Brooklyn, New York. And
mhm,
I told you I grew up in New Jersey. So I
mhm.
used to go in every summer and spend a week with her in Brooklyn, New York. And every afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp, she would have Aunt Isabel over. Now, Aunt Isabel was not related to us. I don't actually even know Isabel's last name. I have no idea who she was, but every day at 3 o'clock she came over because she was my grandmother's best friend. And they would
Uh-huh.
have coffee and they would have coffee cake. And I look at our lives today and I'm like, who has time to have coffee with a friend every single afternoon? But I think
Yeah,
my grandmother was on to something, you know,
yeah,
because they were so deeply connected. And that's a
yeah,
beautiful thing. But we've
yeah.
become so addicted to hurry that it is really ravishing our relationships.
It is, and family relationships so much more, right? So,
Yes.
so now you write this book, and of course you can see I marked off all the pages here. Okay, so you wrote this book. Why did you write it?
Well, because I kept thinking, first of all, I pray about every book I write. The idea comes from the Lord, but the Lord began to show me how lonely people are, and He began to show me in myself that I felt lonely whenever I would get too busy, and I needed, like that season where my husband and I were traveling so much. It's like I need to reconnect with my people. I need time to sit on the floor and play with my grandchildren. I need time to sit and have coffee with my close friends and hear what's on their heart rather than just quickly unpacking, doing laundry, packing, and heading to the next airport, you know? And
Mhm.
and so I realized, like, if I feel this way, probably a lot of people out there do. And as I began to research, I'm like, wow, we're in an epidemic of loneliness. I'm not
Mhm.
the only one. There are many people out there who are feeling lonely.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is such a great book, and I'm hoping that people will pick it up, especially the lonely people out there right now that are listening. So now I want to shift a little bit because you say, loyalty is a commendable trait, but when people start stepping over the line, it becomes a toxic, unhealthy friendship. And what do you do?
Yeah. And so we have to be careful that in every relationship, whether it's in our marriages, whether it's with family members, whether it's with friends, that we keep boundaries in place. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think of, how there are boundary lines around properties. And, I had a friend who was a therapist once tell me boundaries make good neighbors, right? And so I love my neighbors, but if I go over there and I start decorating their house for Christmas, they would be annoyed, because they
Mhm.
want to do that themselves. And so in our relationships, we have to guard against toxic relationships by keeping boundaries in place. Boundaries
Mm.
are things like learning to listen, not giving too much advice. Most people can fix their own problems. They don't need you to fix them for them. And not taking too much, maybe stepping over the line as far as demanding too much from them or having expectations that nobody can live up to. Those
Mhm.
become toxic relationships that are not
Mhm.
healthy for us. So if you
Mhm.
have a friend who needs you constantly and there's no give and take in that relationship,
Mhm.
after a while, that's going to turn a little bit toxic, right? Because
Mhm.
there needs to be a give and take in every relationship.
Mhm. So how do you cure that though? Because, I know there's a lot of people out there that are feeling this because, you'll get into it with a friend and it's dump time. You know you're going to get together with them and it's dump time. So how do you, is there a solution?
Yeah, the solution goes back to boundaries. So what you do is you allow your friends to dump because we all need to dump every now and then. If the
Mhm.
dumping happens continually, you just you don't ditch the whole friendship, but you put some boundaries in place. So you might not pick up, if somebody's calling you 15 times a day, it's time to pick up the phone maybe once and not 14 other times. Just let it go. But
Mhm.
learning how to say also the sweet no, like, no, I really can't do that right now. So if you have a
Mhm.
friend who maybe, you want to serve your friends well. So I want to be careful here. You want to help them when they're sick and things like that. But if it becomes continual, there may be a time to just say the sweet no. No, I'm so sorry. I'm at capacity right now and I can't offer that right now.
Mhm. Mhm. I like that. Thank you. I'm sure
You're
that that's
welcome.
not only is it helping me, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there it's helping today. So then you say each person created by God is a masterpiece and worth knowing. How can we become more attentive to others and God?
Put your phone away for starters. Our phones have become the great distractor. We have,
Absolutely.
if you go to a playground and you watch what the moms are doing, I love it when I see a group of moms at a playground and they're actually talking to each other because often they're scrolling their phones, right? So they're missing what their kids are doing on the playground and they're missing the opportunity to connect with other moms because they're just scrolling social media. I read someplace that we now have the attention span of 7 seconds, which is about the attention span of a goldfish. So that's pretty sad. We need to learn how to focus on each other and ask each other questions. Like, you wonder how many times do you go out with a friend and you haven't asked them, like, where did you grow up? What was that like for you? Where did you go on vacation as a kid? What
Yeah.
did you do for the holidays when you were growing up? Or what's your dream in your job? Are you happy in your job or do you wish you were doing something else? Just the power of learning to ask some thoughtful questions goes a long way. So I like to tell people be curious, find out as much as you can about a person and
Mhm.
just enjoy getting to know them and you'll end up feeling more connected.
Mm. Well, what was your favorite learning lesson? The hardest one, not maybe favorite, but the hardest lesson that you learned by loneliness.
The hardest lesson for me for sure was learning to slow down. Somewhere along the way, I'm a natural achiever. I'm the kind of person that makes lists and checks them off each day, and I write books and I love people, but learning to slow down, I have to remind myself, so little things like when I'm in Target, choosing a longer line rather than the shortest line, and just reminding myself I'm not in a hurry. I don't need to be at the next place in 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
when I'm with people, just really enjoying people. I do love people. And so it is fun for me. I've met a lot of interesting people on airplanes, and it,
Mhm.
it has really underscored how lonely people are because I'll
Yeah.
sit down on an airplane, and people just seem to open up to me. And I have learned more about people on airplanes than ever
Yeah.
before.
Oh my gosh, great place to minister too,
Yeah, yeah, it
to share
is.
the word of
It
God.
is. Yeah.
And yeah, and so God has put all this in your heart, in your life. I mean, it's such a wonderful ministry of this, that there's going to be such a need to read a book like this, because I know myself right now, struggling myself with the lonely world. And when you're going down that road, you don't know if there is a way out of it. And so if you were speaking into my heart right now, what would you say? What would be a good step to get yourself out of that mode?
You don't have to be a victim to loneliness, so learn to see loneliness as a signal. Okay, I'm feeling lonely right now. Then ask yourself this question: what do I need? I need to reconnect. I need to maybe reconnect with God. So begin to pour out your heart in prayer. And I need to reconnect with people. So pick up the phone, call a friend, and invite them over for coffee and say, hey, we haven't had enough time together recently. I would love to just check in and hear how you're doing, and make the focus on them and let
Mhm.
them open their heart to you. You're going to leave that kind of a coffee date feeling so connected because
Mhm.
our hearts need that. And when we learn to empathize with others, there's
Mhm.
actually a chemical reaction that happens in our brain that increases our feelings of connectedness. And
Mhm.
so I would say, yeah, reconnect with God through prayer, reconnect through with at least one friend this week. Take them out to
Mhm.
coffee, invite them over for dinner, go for a walk, go for a hike, do something to connect. Just take a baby step and, reconnect with God, reconnect with a friend. And then if you're interested in the book, I like to suggest that people do the books with a couple of friends, say, hey, I am reading this book and it's really interesting about loneliness. Would you like to read it with me? And then on my website, you can actually download a free discussion guide right now. And
Mhm.
so you don't even really have to think. You can just use the free discussion guide. And these groups are going really well because I've heard from some of them, that people are really, their friendships are going deeper because they've gone through the book together.
Who have you heard from that this is really helping?
I've heard, especially from those that are leading groups, like,
Mm.
wow, this group, we're talking about this and it is encouraging really deep conversations. I heard from a woman yesterday at church. She just grabbed my arm and said, hey, last night we did, I forget what chapter they were on, 4 or 5. And she said, we all ran around and affirmed each other. And it was so special and it was so needed. And we all left feeling so uplifted. So she went on and on. Another friend contacted me and said that she had a friend over who saw the book on their coffee table and said, oh my gosh, where did you get that? I need that book. So my friend told her. Another friend said, another person contacted me and said, this is really changing my life because you're giving me practical steps and showing me how to deepen my relationships.
I love that. You can find out about Becky and get her book and the resources that she's been discussing. And here's her book at beckyharling.com. And she's on Facebook and Instagram, all those places. And Becky, what would you like to leave my audience with today?
Hey, I just want you to know that even if you feel lonely, you are actually never alone because Jesus himself said, never will I leave you, Never will I forsake you. And so you are actually never completely alone. So begin by reaching out to Jesus. Lord Jesus, I want to know you more. I want to feel your presence more. I want to sink into your love more. I need your forgiveness and I want you in my life. And when you start there, you realize, hey, even though I feel lonely, I am never alone.
What if God is inviting you to let go of distractions and seek relationships that reflect his love? And until next time, all glory and honor to King Jesus.